Do you worry that you might not make it home?
Es difícil, es una parte muy difícil porque está de por medio mi vida.
How does so many people choose a life of crime where they can lose their lives every single day? And how does the mighty Sinaloa cartel stay so powerful after over 3 decades and after El Chapo was extradited to a U.S. federal prison? Yeah, it's down to every ruthless soldier who follows their orders blindly and destroys anyone who threatens their power. But it's no easy task to be a cartel soldier. It's a kill or get killed world where you have to be a vicious, real-life monster to come out on top. Let's explore the dangerous lifestyle of the Sinaloa cartel soldiers. To understand the full extent of a Sinaloa cartel soldier's life today, we must go all the way back to the cartel's beginnings. The Sinaloa cartel was created by El Chapo and El Mayo in 1989 after the Guadalajara cartel crumbled into 3 smaller factions. El Chapo and El Mayo had spent 10 years working in the Guadalajara cartel. In other words, for Miguel Angel Felix Gallardo, aka El Padrino. That's Spanish for the Godfather, and it makes sense. El Padrino was the godfather of all modern cartels. That is to say, El Chapo learned from the best. And when El Padrino was arrested, he immediately seized the opportunity and took control of the Sinaloa region of Mexico. Hence the name of his cartel. El Chapo knew what he had to do to grow his empire, bribe officials, to protect his smuggling routes, and use extreme violence against rival cartels to keep them terrified. Then he slowly infiltrated the government, up to the highest-ranking people. This means that every time the cartel makes a penny, the government profits too. So instead of stopping them, the government protects them.
Why do you think they let you do what you do?
Porque la mayoría de las ganancias van a ellos, a los altos mandos del gobierno.
So El Chapo took care of everything, from the ruthless street soldiers to the corrupt vice presidents. After 2 prison escapes, El Chapo was arrested for a 3rd and final time in 2016. Then he was extradited to the U.S. to face 1 million charges. Until his trial, some people believed that, as the Sinaloa cartel's kingpin, El Chapo didn't have to get his hands dirty. He could just order hits from his luxurious mansions and oversee his business from the top. But the thing is, El Chapo liked to get his hands dirty. It was his violence and ruthlessness that had gotten him to the top of the game, and he genuinely enjoyed torturing who he thought were Sinaloa betrayers. El Chapo's former bodyguard, Asias Valdez Rios, described how El Chapo caught an Arellano Felix cartel member and decided to punish him himself. In this horrific state, El Chapo kept the man in a wooden structure for days. He was interrogated, and when he didn't say what El Chapo wanted to hear, he would be shot. But not fatally. El Chapo would bury him alive a few days later. And in 2010, El Chapo killed rival cartel member Hugo Hernandez. Then he cut off his face and sewed it to a soccer ball. The rest of his body was found cut into tiny pieces in 2 ice chests. His message was for the authorities. Sheesh. So if El Chapo is the main role model for the Sinaloa soldiers, you can only imagine what the soldiers end up doing. Here's the sad catch. Most Mexican cartel soldiers start out as vulnerable teens from households ridden by poverty or drug addiction.
Jóvenes, ¿cuáles son sus nombres?
Eric y Manuel,
Eric y Manuel, ¿de dónde son originarios?
de Reynosa, Tamaulipas.
¿Qué piensan hacer?
Vamos a hacer del cartel del Golfo.
El cartel del Golfo. ¿No quieres estudiar tú, joven?
No, eso ya es para niños chiquitos.
¿No te importa el estudio?
No, nada.
To little boys, cartels seem cool. They're a way to prove you're tough and brave. But once you do join, what they make you do just to prove yourself doesn't make you a man. They make you a straight-up desensitized monster.
Going on 13 years old the first time I took a life. It's just one day, got invited to Mexico. I didn't know what was going on at first. And I see about 6 people kneeling down. Then the individual, the person in charge, they start laughing. And I think they saw that scared, panicked look in my face and asked me if I had ever killed somebody.
The cartels imbue their young recruits with fear and a sense of kill or be killed. If you want to look powerful and have the cartel's respect, you'll have to maim and kill for them. If you can't do it, you might end up like your dead enemies.
I've done the simple stuff that everybody starts doing, pulling teeth out, cutting fingers up slowly, or...
And the final initiation ritual is always murder.
He pulled out a handgun, told me to kill that person, the one kneeling in front of him. And I just shot him.
Here's where it gets really dangerous. Most of these kids don't make it out alive. Imagine you're thrown into the deep end, having to kill rival gang members and engage in bloody shootouts when you haven't had any sort of training. And imagine having to prove yourself to the top dogs when you're 11 years old.
It's a constant war zone. You practice with live targets. I mean, I know it sounds harsh saying it this way, but it's just the way it is.
The Network for the Rights of Children in Mexico estimates that there are over 35,000 children and teens involved in cartels. If they refuse to kill, torture, or dismember, they are often killed on the spot.
Bueno, ya están aquí. El que se quiere ir, que se vaya ahorita. Y corto cartucho con la pistola. Aquí la única forma que te vayas es por las patas por delante.
So, yeah, you might see big, tough, scary Sinaloa cartel soldiers in videos, but most of them started out like this.
¿Cómo te llamas?
Edgar, y me Lugo.
¿Cuántos años tienes? 14. ¿Dónde te tuvieron? ¿Dónde te agarraron?
Ahí en el aeropuerto.
¿A dónde ibas? ¿A dónde ibas?
A San Diego,
¿Con quién ibas?
con mi hermana,
¿A los cuántos años empezaste a ejecutar?
los 11.
So it's a classic case of survival of the fittest. The toughest, vilest, most psychopathic of soldiers make it through their teenage years and survive the very dangerous game. In the end, they become the dangerous game.
How old is the little dude over there? 13. That is young, isn't it, to get involved in this game?
Pues está pequeño, pero entre más pequeño más aprende y le gusta.
As of 2023, the Sinaloa cartel is still the most powerful cartel in Mexico.
Powerful is the Sinaloa cartel. Almost the 70% of the world is infected by this cartel.
El Chapo has been inside the Florence Supermax prison for half a decade, but his drug empire is stronger than ever. His partner, El Mayo, and his 4 most trusted sons were left in charge.
They are known as Los Chapitos, the 4 most trusted sons of the world's most notorious drug kingpin. As the I-Team has reported for several years, federal drug investigators here in Chicago consider El Chapo's sons in charge of the Sinaloa cartel that remains this area's largest trafficker of heroin, cocaine, and methamphetamines.
And just like their dad, Los Chapitos don't shy away from inflicting pain and suffering.
They now say this drug lord, nicknamed the Mouse, has ordered the murders of informants, a rival drug trafficker, and a popular Mexican singer who refused to perform at his wedding.
The Sinaloa cartel has gotten so powerful that their soldiers don't just go after rival cartel members. They go after the police themselves.
What we've seen in the last 20 years is some of the cartels have become much more powerful, so that it becomes the cartels actually bullying and controlling elements of the security forces.
Bullying police officers means ambushing them, beating them, and sometimes even killing them in massive shootouts. This means that every day, cartel soldiers and officers are in danger of losing their lives. At a first glance, not every soldier has to deal with death. Some just guard weed ranches.
Allá sembramos mota, sembramos solfia y otros negocios que no queremos que vea la gente ni el gobierno.
Do the police ever come by here, you know?
Así han llegado a venir, pero solo pasan por caminos y uno ya mismo, pues muchas veces le da dinero uno, 20,000, 50,000 pesos para que no te metas en 15 días.
But as soon as the police come in contact with the cartel, soldiers have to be apprehensive. The first option is always bribery. If the officers accept money, then the soldiers don't have to resort to violence. But sometimes the police are really corrupt.
Otra vez quieren mujeres y eso.
So the police come here and you bribe them with women?
Es lo que piden y es lo que le damos. Si ellos vienen en buen plan, pues nosotros en buen plan, nosotros cooperamos con ellos. Y si ellos vienen en modo agresivo contra nosotros, pues nosotros nomás repelemos la agresión.
What about the women's consent? And what happens if a woman doesn't agree to the horrible exchange? And just what does the cartel classify aggression as? After all, they deal with it every day. They must have a pretty high threshold for it. The answer is the exact opposite. Cartel soldiers have a low threshold. Anything can be understood as aggression, even an officer looking at them the wrong way. And this is because all they've known is extreme violence. Violence is their solution to anything. This is the real problem. A Sinaloa cartel soldier will eventually kill someone, probably in their first months working for the cartel.
Have you all, like, killed people with these guns?
Pues sí, pero si no conoce la gente, el problema es que mate pues, uno de mis compañeros, alguien conocido, pues familia. Pero yo supongo que si no lo conoce uno no siente nada.
What's more dangerous then, being in a 24/7 war zone or ending up completely desensitized to murder?
It's like another human being. Does that ever, like, weigh on the conscience? You know, you think about it.
Pues no. No es difícil porque si no los llevan, lo llevan a uno.
In a dog-eat-dog world, cartel soldiers learn they have to shoot first, and so the violence never stops. If you always think it's them or us, then you're prone to taking a life before yours is even in danger. In other words, Sinaloa cartel soldiers are afraid. They're aware of the constant danger, and their only response to this is more violence, which only perpetuates the danger.
Yo creo que la violencia no se va a acabar, porque tenemos que imponer el terreno nosotros, pues.
The only hope to stop the dangerous game is people like this 13-year-old soldier.
Por las drogas ya no se van a pelear y no se van a matar.
If you get asked to carry on the family business, selling drugs, will you say no?
No, pues estudiar veterinario. Me gustan mucho los animales.
¿Qué es tu favorita animal?
Las vacas.
He was born into a family of Sinaloa cartel soldiers, and yet he doesn't want to be a part of it, and is hoping to never be forced into killing someone. Who knows if he will ever get the chance to quit this life? Sadly, most cartel soldiers never get the chance at another life. They get recruited from a very young age, forced to commit the unthinkable, then threatened when they want to quit or talk to the police. If they're ever caught snitching, they get killed on sight. Sometimes soldiers are even killed in prison if the cartel finds out they've been talking to the police. And by the time they're in their 20s, if they're still in the game, they're too far gone to realize what their job entails.
Do you consider yourselves kind of like terrorists?
No, nomás lo que hacemos, nada de otro tipo de acto contra la sociedad que esté mal.
A couple of days ago in Culiacan, a police officer was kidnapped. I suppose to me that seemed like acts of terrorism, you know, if you're kidnapping police.
Pues usted no sabe qué puede hacer el policía. Muchas veces es un policía corrupto que hacen cosas indebidas. Pero alguna razón haber tenido para ese hecho, no, a nadie lo levantan nomás por puras ganas.
Except when they are.
On a much more serious note, 5 alleged cartel members are now in custody after the kidnapping and killings of 4 Americans in Mexico.
Yeah, do as I say, don't do as I do, right? Cartel soldiers do like to talk about rules, honor, and justice a lot. But when you look at their deeds, well, the danger game continues.
Going on 13 years old the first time I took a life. It's just one day, I mean, got invited to Mexico. He pulled out a handgun, told me to kill that person, the one kneeling in front of him. And I just shot him. You'll give a knife to a person in a situation like that, and you'll be surprised at what a person can do with it.
Rosalio Reta emerges as one of the most notorious figures in the Gulf Cartel's reign of terror. His life as a cartel hitman is marked by violence, criminality, and bloodshed. Starting his criminal career at the age of 13, Reta had made a name for himself in the drug enterprise. This is the harsh life of the youngest cartel member ever. Rosalio Reta, also known as Bart, was born on November 2, 1987, in Nuevo Laredo, Tamaulipas, Mexico. Reta grew up in a modest family with relatives on both sides of the United States-Mexico border, which makes them vulnerable to cartels' criminal activities. So as a kid, he was used to crossing the border between the two countries, and he does it with ease. Reta has knowledge of both worlds. So how did this kid manage to become affiliated with one of Mexico's most prominent crime cartels? Well, let's just say life at the border gets a little boring sometimes, and the young Rosalio Reta is a kid with a sense of adventure. At the age of 13, Rosalio Reta crossed into the Nuevo Laredo territory and kickstarted his criminal career from that moment. Rosalio Reta's close friend, Gabriel Cardona, who's also his future partner in crime, took him to a ranch to meet the infamous drug lord, Miguel Trevino Morales.
Miguel Trevino, he was a monster. He was horrible. The stuff that he forced Rosalio to do, the stuff that he had to witness, should never have been forced on anybody.
You might find the name Miguel Trevino Morales familiar. That's because he was one of the most feared and wanted drug lords in Mexico. Miguel Trevino, aka Z40, was a crime boss and leader of the infamous Los Zetas. He and his gang were known to be the most brutal and resentful criminal group in the country of Mexico. Trevino is a very important character in Rosalio Reta's life story, shaping how he became the renowned cartel member he is today. Surprisingly, Trevino Morales had a similar upbringing to Rosalio Reta, and maybe that sparked a connection between these two men. Trevino Morales, or Z40, was also raised in Nuevo Laredo, Tamaulipas, and along the Mexico and US border. He began indulging in criminal activities and joined a local gang called the Los Tejas when he was a teenager. By the late 1990s, Trevino Morales' experience and fluency in English had him recruited by Alciel Cardenas Guillen, who headed the Gulf Cartel and Los Zetas. An important thing to remember is the Gulf Cartel and Los Zetas used to be one organization. There were many progressive issues and conflicts that led to their eventual split later down the road. Trevino Morales rose through the ranks rapidly. He was appointed the regional boss of Los Zetas in Nuevo Laredo in 2005. Around this time, the Gulf Cartel and the Sinaloa Cartel were engaged in intense turf wars, fighting over control of the drug trafficking routes to the United States. In 2006, Trevino Morales managed to secure the drug trafficking routes for the Gulf Cartel and was appointed as the leader of the Zetas. In 2008, Trevino Morales was promoted to the national commander of the Los Zetas after he wiped out the cartel's competitor in Guatemala. Trevino Morales had a strong path leading up to his criminal career. It seems like he had a great relationship with the Gulf Cartel, and the mutual connection between the two would last forever. Except Trevino Morales wasn't satisfied with his current rank anymore. His ambition grew with his experience, and eventually, he wanted to break free from the Gulf Cartel. Trevino Morales led the Los Zetas to declare their independence from the Gulf Cartel in 2010, and the two gangs began engaging in wars with one another. Under his leadership, Los Zetas expanded and became an even more fearsome organization. Not that other cartels were any better, but the Los Zetas are known to utilize shock and awe tactics, which means they are not hesitant to torture, kill, or behead people. An extremely graphic but common torture method this gang used on their victims is called el guiso, which means stew. This method required them to place their victims in oil barrels, douse them in gasoline, and burn them alive. This shows us that Los Zetas are willing to apply unlawful and inhumane methods against others, which makes them undeniably dangerous.
He was one of the first persons I've seen to cut somebody's head off. He took his head off just shooting him. Just by shooting, he shot him more than 200-300 rounds. And he was telling everybody, this is the way you kill somebody. I seen one time Miguel Trevino was torturing somebody. It was two brothers. And he made one brother kill the other one. He told them, look, only one of y'all is gonna live. So you have to kill him, or you kill him, so decide. I already knew that he was gonna kill the both of them, but he just wanted to not torture these people, not physically, but mentally. Mess them up in the head, to where one of them had to kill one another. They had to decide who's gonna die, who's gonna get to go home.
Though the gang is mostly involved in drug trafficking, they also operate through protection rackets, assassinations, extortion, kidnappings, and other illegal activities. So Los Zetas are operating for violence and brutality, and Trevino Morales ensured their reputation remained daunting to law enforcement and civilians. Mexican authorities believe that Trevino Morales and his gang were responsible for the murder of 72 immigrants in 2010 and the massacre of 193 people in 2011.
Last week, you had the worst massacre in this entire drug war, with 72 migrants killed by the Zetas, one of the drug cartels that operates primarily just below Laredo and Brownsville, Texas. They actually operate all over Mexico, but that's sort of their home base. They're accused of gunning down 72 migrants. That's obviously the worst massacre that's occurred in what's an incredibly bloody drug war here.
Luckily, this man was arrested on July 25, 2013 by the Mexican Marines, so he could no longer do any damage. Unfortunately, Trevino Morales had managed to wreck young Rosalio Reta's life before he was put away. Yes, imagine a 13-year-old boy being towered over by Trevino Morales, a merciless and cold-hearted cartel leader. It's a miracle he didn't kill Rosalio Reta at first sight, but he did damage him internally, forever. So Rosalio Reta and his friend Gabriel Cardona were brought before Trevino Morales. The cartel is known for recruiting vulnerable youth for their deadly operations, and Reta later said he was scared out of his skin upon their first meeting. He was a kid thrust into an unknown environment. The day Rosalio Reta crossed the Mexican border, he sought an adventure, but it soon turned into a life of condemnation. The first meeting between Reta and Trevino Morales was brief, but the crime boss took a liking to the young man almost immediately.
He became close with Miguel Trevino. He became real close with the big boss. He trusted him. He gave Rosalio the big jobs. He was proud of the work that he did. He basically took him underneath his wing and trained him to be just like him. It's like
Trevino Morales saw the perfect mentee to mentor. Their first meeting ended in an irreversible way, and a life was taken as a result of it. Reta later said in an interview that if he didn't kill the person, they would have definitely killed him. It was like a survival game, and Reta became a player way too early.
I think they saw that scared, panicked look in my face and asked me if I had ever killed somebody. And I said I had, knowing that I had never took nobody's life, so he pulled out a handgun, told me to kill that person, the one kneeling in front of him. And I just shot him.
I had to do it. What other option do I have? If I don't do it, I know it's gonna happen to me.
Yet that was all it took for Rosalio Reta to become a cartel member. It's like a primitive initiation, but the Los Zetas are known to do worse things. And this was only the beginning of a long and brutal journey. It was about 2 weeks after witnessing his first execution that Reta received a phone call from Trevino Morales' people, asking him to come back to work for them again. It was at this moment that he became a child soldier for the Los Zetas. Reta later said that the training with the cartel was not your typical training.
It's almost all the same, but you don't practice with paper targets. It's a constant war zone. You practice with live targets. It's just the way it is. The people we were using as targets were rival cartel members. There used to be 50, 60, sometimes over 100 people, just like cattle for the house.
The young man found himself shooting at live targets during practice. Reta was trained with handguns, assault rifles, and rocket launchers. Slowly but progressively, he became a highly skilled assassin. Reta claimed he did not enjoy the killings and bloodshed, but he was exceptionally skilled at handling a gun.
I didn't enjoy it, but I tried to be the best at what I was doing.
However, according to an interrogation tape acquired by CNN, Reta was heard saying, "I thought I was Superman. I loved doing it, killing that first person. They tried to take the gun away, but it was like taking candy from a kid." His love for killing came from the adrenaline that Trevino Morales and Los Zetos instilled in him. It made him feel powerful to take someone's life. Unbeknownst to the teen, someone could have easily taken his life, just as he had taken others. Due to his deadly talents, Reta quickly rose through the ranks. When he was just 17 years old, he was asked to be admitted along with 70 other young assassins to train at the Zetas camp, where they were taught various combat skills by Colombian mercenaries. After completing the training, Reta was recruited to become a cartel assassin. Reta's first job was to take down a corrupt Mexican cop who had severed ties with Los Zetas. and joined alliances with one of their rival gangs, the Sinaloa Cartel. The completion of this assassination caught the attention of the US and Mexican authorities, spelling trouble for the young hitman. Eventually, Reta became more and more immersed in this line of work. He made a decent living from the cartel. It is reported that Rosalio Reta and his friend, Gabriel Cardona, lived in fancy houses, drove expensive cars, and were paid $10,000 for each killing. As their lives escalated, their appearance changed as well. Reta began covering his face in tattoos, and Cardona had a set of eyes tattooed on his eyelids. As members of the cartel's hitmen, they carried out many brutal killings, organized kidnappings, and spread fear wherever they went. Their reputation for mercilessness elevated them to significant roles in the cartel, confirming their roles as strong enforcers of the criminal organization.
I mean, I've done the simple stuff that everybody starts doing. Teeth out, fingers up, slowly.
However, the glory didn't last long. There are usually only two outcomes for drug cartel members. You either get killed in a massive shootout or get incarcerated by authorities. Luckily, Rosalio Reta only experienced the latter. Gabriel Cardona, Reta's best friend and partner in crime, quickly became the target of federal authorities. In 2006, Cardona was arrested at a safe house and taken into custody. Authorities reported that Cardona had killed 20 to 30 people. He pleaded guilty to some of the known murders and was sentenced to 80 years in prison. After the arrest of his best friend, Rosalio Reta went rogue from the cartel, fearing retaliation from rival gangs. The stress of constantly having to look over his shoulder must have worn him down, because eventually he contacted the U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency to surrender and testified against the Zetas. It is said that Rosalio Reta had committed at least 30 homicides. Authorities said he even tried to brag about humans to white tigers during an interrogation. In 2008, Reta was given a combined 70-year prison sentence in the United States and Mexico. The seriousness of his crimes, including many terrifying acts like murder and organized crime, made people consider a larger issue: how young and vulnerable people are recruited into dangerous drug groups. This prompted many to seek better ways to address this significant problem. For the most part, Reta seems remorseful about his past. He told CNN, "I've come to regret everything I've done. I couldn't take it anymore. It was really hard for me. I wasn't living my life." Reta was one of the many kids and teens recruited into the dark underground operations of gangs and cartels. The Gulf Cartel and Los Zetas aren't the only crime organizations using American and Mexican children, turning them into child soldiers. Many families living near the U.S.-Mexico border live in fear of their children being recruited by these drug cartels. Rosalio Reta's life illustrates how powerful criminal groups can trap people, especially young ones who can be easily influenced. When he was caught, imprisoned, and began helping the police, it gave hope that these dangerous cartels can be stopped. If we don't put a stop to it, more young lives will be ensnared in this criminal cycle run by the cartels. Placing one or two drug lords or cartel members doesn't stop the entire operation, but it offers hope to communities and families that their efforts are not in vain. Hopefully someday the border between the U.S. and Mexico can become a peaceful place where the two nations meet without struggles or conflicts.
A lot of people think that correctional officers are the ones that are in charge inside. They are not. The ones that are in charge are the inmates and the cartel that runs the prison system. There was 14 people killed. The main boss was decapitated.
Were you ever scared for your life?
Every day. That's how you live.
Guns, narcotics, and violence are staples for Mexican cartels. The nation loses thousands of cartel members and locals every year. Seeing the news of violent incidents makes us shiver. But what about the people who commit them? How do these people end up as hitmen or sicarios in these cartels? How are they trained? And how can they turn off their emotions and become such ruthless masters of violence? In 2023, former Sinaloa cartel sicario Ali Gonzalez opened up about his life in the cartel and prison and recounted tales of the horror he witnessed there. Tales that would disturb anyone. Stay tuned as we tell you the story of Ali, the hitman who was groomed into becoming a brutal cartel sicario. Ali Gonzalez was born in Guerrero in southern Mexico. His parents took him to the United States when he was only 1.5 years old. He spent his formative years in South Central Compton in Southern California and lived the life of an ordinary American child.
A normal, you could say, American childhood, around gangs and all that good stuff that corrupts a kid.
And obviously it's gang related, everything's gang related.
Even in school?
Even in school.
Growing up in South Central Compton made him extremely sensitive to his surroundings. The area demanded the locals be aware of where they were walking, or if they were drawing too much attention to muggers. It also added stress to Ali's life. He didn't have much peace at home. He believed that his family being broken was the reason he got involved in crime. His father was abusive towards him and his sister, which prompted Ali to become violent against him. He believes that this was his first step toward a criminal life.
The stress of seeing that obligated me to try to kill him. That a couple times. Obviously, I was barely 12. So I think that's the main reasons why I was trying to just get out of my own world, because of the destruction that my own father had done.
Ali's father ended up in prison and received a sentence of 16 years. His mother couldn't speak English and was not equipped to work and provide for her young children. They also didn't have any help from other family members. That's when Ali was forced to pursue the life of a gang member. He needed the money to sustain his family, and the world of crime was a shortcut to that. He started small, but progressed from there. He was only 14 or 15 years old when he began trafficking narcotics to different countries on order from his bosses.
First, it was home invasions, theft, normal petty theft. Then it moved on to moving certain amounts of drugs to different counties, depending on where the person that was in charge of the game wanted you to move them.
His mother despised what he did and didn't want to keep him with the other children.
My mom didn't want me in the house anymore, around 15, 16, because of the bad influence I was getting my brother and my two sisters. So she told me, you gotta choose a path,
Ali left his family and began living with his gang peers. As he was good with guns, he thought of trying his luck in Mexico and becoming a sicario.
And he's like, what do you want to do? I'm like, well, I'm good with guns, I've always been really handy with weapons, and I've always considered myself a person that is not afraid, I'm not a coward. And I told him, I want to get into the sicariato, we call it. It's called basically mercenary.
His peer set him up with someone from Mexico, and Ali was off to a new adventure. He was 17 years old.
At the same time, I knew that this was a movement, because once you're into the game, you only got two ways. You die, or you go to prison.
The cartel business has a dark and dirty side. Apart from hiding from law enforcement, they also have to fight with other cartels. When members of one cartel chase another and take their lives, the other cartel retaliates.
They kill one of yours, you go looking for one of them. That's how I ended up as a gunslinger or a hitman.
Ali was further pushed into violence when he got caught in the middle of a narcotics traffickers' war.
It's a whole different world, and the violence that the human being is able to do is really unthinkable,
Ali worked for the Sinaloa cartel in Sonora, which is one of the biggest cartels in Mexico. He also worked for the Morelos and La Familia Michoacana. According to him, the cartels were doing much worse things in Mexico, something a first world country couldn't even imagine, all because they wanted to make a name for themselves. So what did typical cartel operations look like, and how did Ali fit in with them? According to him, the cartels were divided into two factions. One looked after the narcotics trafficking, and the other one was the military faction, who defended the cartel. This faction primarily fought for territorial dominance. They also tried to capture the best routes of trafficking narcotics inside the U.S., and spent time locating and eliminating key commanders from rival cartels.
Going into cities and locating these rival hitmen, these rival people or rival drug lords, and taking them out.
Ali had initially been on the trafficking side, but he loved the adrenaline rush that came with holding and using the rifle on enemies. So he switched and became a sicario. They had strict rules to follow and had to keep themselves alive while on the go. Ali knew the game, and he absorbed every bit of training he received from his cartel bosses. If any of the sicarios were in debt with any of the cartels, they would sometimes maintain them by paying with narcotics instead of a salary. These people didn't last long in the business.
Obviously, the people that would do drugs, you would see them lasting 3 months, 2 months. They would end up getting murdered.
But this acted as a favor for the sicarios. During a battle, they would easily identify such people from the enemy cartel and take them out quickly. Keeping them alive would endanger the lives of Ali and his peers, as the rival members could work as evidence and leak sensitive information to the authorities.
If you're a professional, you know that what you do is you just put 2 in the chest and 1 in the head, that's it.
According to Ali, cartels used these people as cattle for slaughter. They were disposable, and so they used them for quick, petty jobs. If they didn't make it out alive, the cartel bosses wouldn't have to sustain a big loss. Many of these cartel recruits were very young, and some of them hadn't even finished their primary education. But making easy money might not have been their only motive when they joined these cartels. Ali felt that cultural influence was equally important in shaping their choices.
It's more about the influence that society gives them, you know, the type of music that they hear, what they see on TV. That's what they feel inspired to be like that. And when in reality they have no idea what that life is all about.
The life of a cartel member is surrounded by death. Close associates have their lives taken away every day. Ali stressed that every member must use their brains and courage together in order to survive as a sicario.
You can't just be running around there thinking you're the biggest and the baddest, because there's always going to be someone bigger or better than you.
So where did these cartels get all this power and dominance? Shockingly, they had assistance from the local law enforcement authorities, because without their help, they wouldn't be able to continue their trade so smoothly.
Is police connected to cartels?
Yeah, definitely. Local police are 100%. State police, you could say 50-50.
While in many instances, the police helped them willingly. In some, they were forced to assist because they didn't have a choice.
It's basically the same law that Pablo Escobar told the government. You know, it's plata o plomo, you know? It's money or lead, whichever one you want.
Some cartels didn't even offer money to bribe the local authorities. They simply took them out during clashes and stole the gear from the bodies of the officers. But the violence went far beyond this, and Ali saw his fair share. He recalled an incident where the cartel members picked up 12 to 15 men and women. Not all of them belonged to rival cartels, and some were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Ali and his peers arrived at a ranch where another group of the Sinaloa members were preparing to take out these people. They were also recording the incident to release on the internet.
And they went at it with axes and chainsaws. They discovered everybody.
The reason behind this brutality? Ali said that they only wanted to send out a message, and they did it in the most gruesome way possible. Messages like this one created fear in their rivals, and they behaved better to avoid ending up in the places of those victims. It also meant that the cartels could go around the city and collect extortion money from anyone they wanted.
Once the society or the people where these people are operating, they see several heads appear in the morning with a big old message, or several pieces of bodies scattered around the city, then it's easy for you to go and ask for extortion from anybody.
All the cartel members received the same training, to be ruthless and to take lives without mercy. Ali had received the same, and he had also contributed to a few brutal incidents. Once he had fired at a rival cartel member and injured his leg. The victim was trying to get away. Ali wanted to fire at him once again, but the rifle jammed 2 times. So he went ahead and used the rifle butt on the rival gang member to take his life.
The rifle jammed again, so I basically went up to him and with the butt of the rifle until his head exploded, and that was it.
Ali believed that he had killed more than 70 people in his long tenure as a cartel hitman. But did he ever think about his victims? Perhaps not. Ali said that it was only a job for him, and as a professional, he was trained not to take anything personally. Whenever a sicario mixes emotions with his job, he was reducing his chances of survival. Some of the sicarios didn't have any families or anyone for whom they had strong emotions, because their enemies could use that against them. This meant cartel life was very lonely.
In my case, had no family. Try to avoid being even close to anybody that you had any feelings towards, because they could use that as leverage.
At one point during his tenure, Ali landed in prison. But what mistake did a well-trained Sicario like him make to get captured? Well, he let his emotions come in the way of his job. His rivals killed some people who were close to Ali. He went out of his way to find them and take care of the situation. But state and federal government authorities captured him. They interrogated him and slapped him with first-degree murder charges.
They wanted to give me 30 years of prison for murder. I only did 3 years.
Ali saw a different kind of life in prison. It was nothing like the movies or documentaries showed. Life in prison in the US was also much better than in Mexico. Family members of the inmates had to supply daily necessities, otherwise they didn't get anything from prison authorities.
Basically, your family has to come in and drop you off clothes that they obviously ask of a certain color. They have to drop you off toilet paper, they have to drop you off soap, shampoo, whatever you need to keep yourself clean inside of prison, your family has to give to you.
The prison only provided 3 meals a day and water to the inmates. The cells were overcrowded too. 11 to 16 people lived in a cell that was meant for only 4 people.
So you're speaking about having people sleeping on top of the toilet, underneath the bench that you have to have your food, in the middle of the what do you call it, that little space that you have in the middle of the 2 concrete beds and 2 underneath the concrete beds.
According to Ali, every prison was run by a specific cartel. The guards had no choice but to comply with their orders.
If they don't cooperate with what the cartel wants, then they know that they're going to be dealt with outside.
Every guard knew which inmates they could punish and which they couldn't. The repercussions of messing with the wrong inmate could potentially end their lives.
And we're killers, bro. You know, when you're a killer, you're not a drug dealer. You're a killer. You know what your business is. And as a killer, you want respect from those people that are not killers or that are not in that same level of mindset. You know.
Inmates belonging to a certain cartel received a job from their bosses during their time in prison. Ali was in charge of interrogating anyone coming in for trafficking or homicide. By following the protocol, he took permission from the correctional officer before he started work.
And we would go in with the permission of the security of the correctional officers, pull out smartphones, start taking pictures, start interrogating inside of the prison.
The cartels often promised the captured sicarios that they would get them out, but they never did. So when Ali saw he wasn't going to get out of prison anytime soon, he decided to leave the cartel.
So I basically washed my hands and said, you know what, I'm done with you guys. I ain't with the rivals, I ain't with you. I just want to be left alone, because obviously my time here is going to be long.
The cartels didn't accept that, and they made him pay for his decision.
They didn't accept that, and obviously there was repercussions. Was being where I have a broken rib, eardrum.
Ali joined hands with the Chicanos of the prison, and they started rebelling against the cartel inmates. Chicanos are people of Mexican descent who were born in the United States. They took the lives of 2 leaders and celebrated their achievements. As things were getting too brutal, Ali was shifted to a state prison where he did the next 1.5 years. This was a maximum security prison, so things were uglier here.
The maximum security is inside this same state prison, but it is isolated from the whole sections.
So you're not gonna see anyone from
no.
the side, yeah.
You don't see anybody. There's just 2 sections in maximum security. But the main bosses that really control the whole distribution of who gets what kind of drugs, what comes into the prison, are in maximum security, because they're protected from the rest of the crowd.
He went from a prison of 500 to a prison of 13,000 inmates. Ali said his experience in that prison had scarred him, and he would never forget some of the horrible things he saw there. Prisoners often rioted and took the lives of anyone they saw as unfit to be in there. They didn't allow the anti-riot correctional officers to come inside and fix the problems, and preferred to take care of them on their own.
They put all the dead bodies in the main entrance, and they told them that there was no problems inside maximum security, that all they wanted was them to take their trash. The people that lift up the dead bodies and the criminal investigations came in, took their pictures and took the bodies.
So what does this level of violence do to you? Ali said that with the daily violence and the loved ones gone from life, it starts to have a negative effect on you. Sometimes he would end up in a battle with rival cartels that would go on for hours, and it made him wonder whether he could come out of it alive.
You have everything, you know, you have money, you have drugs, you have women, but you don't have peace, you know.
After prison, this is when Ali began to question the life he was living and asked himself if it was worth dying for. He didn't want to go back to prison after witnessing the brutality there, so he'd accepted that he might have to die soon.
I had that mindset of that I've already been in prison. I ain't going back. I'd rather die in a firefight than go back into prison.
You're just a pawn for the real people that are making money. They're not gonna worry for you. They're not loyal to you. You're just something that can be replaced by something else.
On a cold January night, Ali went into a brawl with another lieutenant of the cartel who wanted to remove him and take his position. Ali knew he had a few options: to finish off this lieutenant and become an enemy to the cartel, go to a rival cartel for help, or just leave. He chose to drop everything and run away.
Just left my rifle, took my vest off, left the drugs that we had in the car, left the money that I had in the car, stole one of their pickups, and just drove until the gas ran out.
I remember at that time it was like 3 in the morning. I called up some of the closest people that I had, and I told them, you know what, I'm bummed.
As of 2023, Ali hadn't seen his mother in 17 years, but he has been in contact with her and his siblings. Even though he'd lost contact with them at one point in his life, he reinstated it later on.
We all take our decisions, and we have to live with our consequences. So if anything happens to me, then don't worry about it. Let the dogs eat me, because that's the life I chose.
Ali is trying hard to walk out of his past. He's putting his strength and enthusiasm in combat sports to good use and working as a boxing instructor. He's also trying to help the youth and spread knowledge about the life inside these cartels and prisons. He isn't all that worried about being in a good position and making a lot of money, because he's seen that life up close, and it didn't bring him peace. Growing up without a father, Ali knows what it can do to the tender minds of a young child. Mexico has many broken families, which has created a generation more susceptible to the glamours of gang life. Ali wants to be the supportive figure who believes in these young children and teens, so that they don't get derailed so easily. After enduring so much, Ali is still haunted by the ghosts of his past, but he is hopeful of overcoming them someday.
Yeah, I suffer of PTSD, suffer insomnia, lack of emotion sometimes. Sometimes they tell me that I'm very cold. It's something that you can't just let go out of the blue, you know. I think it takes time to understand that you're no longer in that life, you know.
Ali is struggling with handling emotions and doesn't know how to deal with normal people and even his family members. But he says that he didn't take the life of anyone who was innocent, and that's a sliver of comfort in his dark memories. Even after so much, Ali says that he wouldn't change anything because all these experiences have made him who he is today. What do you think about the life of Ali Gonzalez? Do you believe that his life could have been different had he not had a bad childhood? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching the video. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel.